Hi, James Craig here. I am an independently published author, and you can find the links in my description below. And I was talking about something on Twitter today, or X. Sorry, Elon, I'm still dead naming it. And this is it's something that comes up in conversation quite often. And I felt like talking about it basically. And that is one of the reasons I went self publishing. The traditional publishing industry is broken, and I don't think there's any saving it. Uh, a lot of people go, oh, they're just bad. Oh, they were always bad. They'll say, oh, they've been politically compromised. They're woke. They're this. They're that. I believe, and there's also this extremely lame response of, people have been saying the publishing industry is going to be destroyed forever. I was there 50 years ago and they were saying the same things. And look, it's better than ever. The problem is that 50 years ago, they were selling new books. Today, they're selling the books they were selling 50 years ago. Now, a very, very common thing what people bring up when they talk about how great indie publishing is and how much they enjoy the indie books is that they will take more risks. They're more exciting. There's more character to these stories. And I think that, in a large part, explains why traditional publishing houses with this lingering smell of prestige, which is all it is anymore. It's an old lady's perfume. They're boring. Traditional publishing is boring, even though it's really not. You look at the best books to come out, and most of them are traditionally published. You get your Expand series, you get your Mars or whatever. You name it. It's probably like the best books coming out probably really are still traditionally published. Just ask a Brandon Sanderson fan. But let's be real, most of what they put out is absolute garbage. Nobody likes what they're putting out. They've had to testify in lawsuits that books don't make back the price of their cover art, typically. Which I've talked about in other videos, is the pain of being an independently published author. I don't think it's politics. That probably surprises some of you. I don't think politics killed publishing at all. I think the fact that politics got in is proof that the system was broken. Because in a lot of ways, if what you want to do is inject your left-wing activism into the publishing scene, which they obviously are doing, there is no disputing that. That's a luxury that only exists when there's enough money coming in. If you look at the way a publishing house makes money, obviously it's done through preferential deals with bookstores, and bookstores have been on the decline, but I don't think that really matters to publishing houses. They'll happily just sell to Amazon. That shouldn't be any difference whatsoever. But publishing houses have to get books that they have the legal right to sell, they have to produce them, and they have to send them to customers for money. Now, the problem is people, when they talk about publishing houses, they're talking about SFF. Where's my cursor? Talking about science, fiction, fantasy. What publishing houses actually make their money on is classics, cookbooks, political books, nonfiction, textbooks, or school assigned, romance, and that's kind of it. That's where the real money is. It is not in new science fiction and fantasy, or huge names, super leads. You get these industry people into interviews, and they will say that the idea of a mid-list author is dead. There is no such thing as a mid-list author in traditional publishing anymore, because you just wouldn't be a mid-list author. If you're a mid-list author, that means you can go independent and survive better as an independent rather than traditional scene, because you already have a fan base willing to show up and keep buying from you. So the traditional publishing house can't keep those people because they don't have the competency to actually boost them up to like super lead status and actually make them rich. But maybe they can do that on their own. You might as well cut them out. What they instead have are this little tiny sliver of super leads that have their own niche that are very popular. Your Brandon Sandersons, your whoever wrote A Court of Thorn and Roses, you know, those kinds of people. The household names are raking in tons of money right now. And everyone under that are gambles. They are the people that are lucky to sell 50 copies of a book. Because the publishing house is putting out thousands of books every month because they have these contracts to fulfill with bookstores that they really would be better off if they just ditched bookstores. But then you couldn't get on the New York Times best-selling list, that rigged thing. But when they are processing a new author's work, they don't know if that's actually good enough to become a super lead. So they have to take risks, and they have to form a decision-making process to decide if they are putting money into it, how much money, and how much time they're putting into a new coming author. And in a lot of ways, this is exactly what an independent author faces. It's just different because as an independent author, buck stops there. They make all the decisions. They have to work out the money for cover art, editing, beta readers, advanced reader copies, you name it. They have to handle it all themselves, and it becomes a question of their money for their believing in themselves. Which is why you get a lot of terrible shit self-published to Amazon. It's because you get people who shouldn't be publishing. And that's something the glut of a slush pile, I think, is the big reason that traditional publishing is broken right now. Now, suppose that this MS Paint document that I've had sitting here forever is the domain of all possible books. And somewhere in here is a possible book that has been pitched. Now, the question is that actually a good book? Is that a book that is trash? Is it okay? Like, will it break even, or will it go wild? You have to look at it and make an educated opinion. Now, the problem is, taste comes into play. So what first happens is the first line of filtering is the literary agent, which, by the way, there are other people that will tell you the horror stories of agents because they're not very qualified. There are qualified agents, but just because you find somebody working as a literary agent does not mean that they are qualified to be a literary agent. Like, it's very dangerous. Aspiring authors can get really screwed. An agent is supposed to make sure that the book is worth sending on to publishing houses and editors and so on. A. B. Know who is buying and who is paying the best, and they're supposed to be able to handle the legal negotiations. And they're supposed to be bringing a business skill set that the author has not bought. Here is that the agent is going to assess that book, and they're going to have their opinion of what is a good book. That, unfortunately, is all it is. It's an opinion. They're going to say that this domain of all possible books is good books. I'm going to work with this book. I'm not going to just give it a form rejection. We're going to move on. Okay, so the author has passed two filters, themselves and an agent. That agent now needs to send it to an editor because that is, once again, a different skill set, even though it's basically a writer skill set. They just have to have more technical training and be able to give a second opinion. I can do a video about editors some other time why I don't use them. Now, so for it to go forward, they need an editor willing to work on it. The editor has opinions on what makes for a good story that would make money, because this is an industry. They are trying to make their money back. That's how this is supposed to work. Now, are there political activists in here that are willing to put garbage in? I actually don't think they are publishing books that they think will fail unless there's actually just nepotism of publishing their friends. because you aren't making a political impact if 3 people buy the book. So, let's say the book passes the editor. The problem is the domain of books that get approved by the agent and the editor they want to work with is smaller. There are less books that will do that. It has to appeal to both of these people. Now, this is topological. I'm not saying this is to scale or anything, but I think you can see where I'm going. The editor then needs to sell it to a publishing house, basically. Publishing house has their idea of what makes for a good book that will make its money back. Boom, you're now in the intersection of 3 people plus the author's approval. Publishing house goes, oh, this sells to these people. We know how to get into these channels. We have these bookstore connections. Readers expect this kind of stuff. This person's retiring. We need someone to write spy thrillers for us so we can keep our market share or whatever. They have their own opinion, which is an opinion. Then the publishing house says, yes, all right, so how do we sell this? And then they pull in a marketer. It works for them, obviously, but the marketer goes, well, I don't care if the book's good because I care about if the book will sell. And a book that sells needs X, Y, and Z. It needs an angle. It needs a readership. It needs whatever thing. And honestly, this is where the politics really get in. That's where you start seeing all the intersectionality getting pushed because it's something that can be pushed. It is something that you can use to differentiate the new guy from the old guy. Which is a big issue because new authors are always in competition with the last 100 years of genre fiction that are still in print and licensed by these publishing houses, because people suck at finding books. You gotta realize that if you're having these conversations, the consumers, are not good at consuming. So, what do we end up with here? A 4-layer Venn diagram of one of the smallest areas on the map is the one that actually gets all the way through approved, funded, and advance paid to the author, and they print copies and put it on bookshelves. And then what happens? Well, no. People have to actually buy the damn thing. There's a lot of people out there. A lot of things can be found. People are willing to put up with very bad stuff and enjoy it. But they have to actually find it, and that's where, you get into this secondary issue of well, what actually works in word of mouth marketing? What kind of book are people going to talk about or show their friends or loan the book out to, so on and so on. So you just keep getting these compounding layers of overlapping but not perfectly overlapping opinions of what makes for a good book. And you have to get all of those okays to get the book actually sold from all those different people. Which brings me to my conclusion of no shit traditional publishing feels boring and safe. It doesn't require a single person in this chain of events to intentionally be going, oh, is this a safe thing to sell? All of them can be applying their own creative desires and go, oh, does this fit my taste? Is this what the art I want to be bringing forward? The problem is there's so fucking many people between the author and the customer that the stars have to align for something genuinely good and innovative to actually get to the shelf. Traditional publishing is fucked because of this. The classics are going into public domain. People can just re-upload them to Kindle Direct Publishing. Cookbooks have been replaced by websites. Political books are money laundering. Those will still be worth money to them, I guess, but who buys political books? Nonfiction, self-help, that sells like hotcakes still. That's what's keeping them afloat. Textbooks, school assigned books. Though, honestly, are schools even really reading books anymore? Everyone's pirating textbooks nowadays. I don't understand how that business, which is just so transparently exploitative of students, I don't understand how they're still in business. romance has moved to self-pub because consumers of romance want to be extremely specific with what kind of story they get, and it's just better served in indie pub. So they have super leads for now, but they no longer have the infrastructure and the competency to pull up an author from Drud, from the bottom to mid-list to super leads. They don't have the competency to make new super leads. So as these guys die, like George R.R. Martin is going to die, they do not have a replacement for George R.R. Martin. And they don't have the skill set to make one because there is so little money left going around that competent people are no longer going into the industry. It is experiencing brain drain like many other industries right now across the world. The editors of today are not as good as the editors 40 years ago. They're not. The agents aren't as good. The marketers aren't as good. No one. It's a compounding problem where as the skill set supporting the author goes down, the ability to sell the book as well is going to go down, which means they're going to sell less, which means there's less money, which means you're going to get less competent people, and you get into a death spiral, which results in people going, "Oh, this is boring trash," and then they go look for something else to buy. Now, is there hope? Maybe. I personally think that the mandatory change for traditional publishing, which there really should be a industry niche for supporting creatives who don't want to deal with the business aspects. The business aspects are worth money. Take your cut of the money. Some people, like Chuck Dixon, as one example, don't want to do that stuff. They will pay other people to do it for them. That should theoretically continue existing. But when you look at online electronic submissions that can just get spammed by people from around the world, you get into this volume problem of deciding what books are worth bringing forward, what ones are going to stand out, and then how do you market against the millions of self-pub books that are coming out, most of which or plenty of which are going to be similar to what the traditional publishing house, are putting out. There is simply a volume problem that is fundamentally different from the way it was in the 90s, when you had to print out manuscripts and mail them in. You could only have single manuscript submissions at a time, because you just get rejected if they found out over coffee that an author had sent their manuscript to 2 different publishing houses at the same time. It's broken now. Slush reading is terrible. Most stuff that gets queried out is unreadable garbage. I don't fault the people going through these piles of submissions for sending out form letters or anything like that. It's going to require a well-trained artificial intelligence to do the preliminary vetting. That is the only, that I believe that is mandatory to save the traditional publishing industry. They need a way to reduce the volume effectively, especially now that people are going to be using ChatGPT to write books to try and get a nickel. Yeah, it doesn't require evil to end up with a bad, boring product. It requires too many cooks in the kitchen. You should buy my books. Links are in the description where I am the one cook. Then, hit the subscribe button.